I will never forget Stephen Lawrence, a talented student and loving son, adored by his parents, Neville and Doreen, tragically taken from them at the age of 18. My world changed on the 22nd of April 1993. News headlines read murdered by white youths at a bus stop, innocently. That was gut-wrenching and stuck on my mind. Chosen randomly, wrong place, wrong time. His black face could easily have been mine. It was my George Floyd moment back then, you see, and it still makes no sense to me. For an unforgiving family trial, where even Nelson Mandela came to raise the profile and walk the long walk with the Lawrence family, shaming the Met and the Race Relation Act's inadequacies. The fact that the act is needed at all is a failure of a Britain that gave that famous call to a Windrush generation to come lend a hand.
To help rebuild this motherland.
You tell me, how should I react when most choose to ignore the Race Relations Act that states socially, economically, educationally and more?
To discriminate on the grounds of race
is simply
against the law. We know the law. It's not some apparition in black people's heads or chips on shoulders of race issues long dead. We see those not willing to admit to uncomfortable pasts, not knowing for us that these histories last. This is why it took 18 long years and a Macpherson report through blood, sweat and tears that saw the abolition of the double jeopardy law. 2 out of the 5 retried is something Britain never experienced before. A black family actually changing the law to bring about convictions that said, in 2012, 2 will serve life for killing Stephen dead. I wish I could say it's done and dusted and we're happy with pride, but it isn't, I can't lie. When black people like Stephen continue to die. None of this I've said is done to create any controversy.
It's simply explaining what brought us here to support
Stephen's legacy. In this moment of global unrest, where people of all ethnicities are voicing their protest, alongside black people, to say we will no longer ignore the racism we all deplore. And that's why we will honor Stephen with humility and embrace all the differences and diversity of our human race, in celebration of all Britain can be.
In our families, our lives,
and our communities. We will make the changes that we need to see, raising our voices in all we do. We will educate everyone
that he is part of all of us too.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
Stephen is an extrovert. He gives this air that is, which he is confident in himself. He knows who he is. He's not somebody who you always have to be saying, you must do this or you must do that. He already has sussed out what it is. And we've always said from the age of 7, he knew where he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And all we did was to encourage him, give him the tools that he needed.
I think when we walked through this morning and looking up and all the faces and stuff here, and for me, I'm really grateful that people feel that they want to support and be part of, because I think it's hard enough for us within the black community, and something happened to one of our children and stuff, to get that support. And I've been fortunate. I've had so much people who has taken me on or taken on the name of Stephen and want to do things for us.
What does it mean to you, Stephen Lawrence Day, and how it has embraced the nation? For me, I wanted to ask you, who is Stephen?
Good evening, all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening in memory of Stephen Lawrence, who was sadly murdered in a racist attack 28 years ago on the 22nd of April, 1993. We mark this day as a day to celebrate his legacy and remind ourselves of the positive impact his death has had and continues to have on society. Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation has organized today's event entitled Message to My Younger Self. This is a career-based event to help underrepresented young people to understand that we all have struggles, and it's really about how we use these challenges as learning experiences to advance ourselves, our causes, and our communities, even in the face of adversity. So welcome, welcome, welcome. My name's Monique Campbell-Dixon. I'm a London-based author of Once Bad Intentions, a coming-of-age love story about redemption and growth. I'm also a senior sales lead at Adobe's Experience Cloud, where I help businesses understand complex data management and personalization challenges to drive business growth. I will be your host for this evening, and I am so excited to welcome, to share this space really with such extraordinary and courageous women who are trailblazers with a wealth of experience and wisdom that I hope you'll find value in helping you best define your worlds ahead and live your best lives. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our esteemed panelists. First, we have Hannah Mercer, Vice President of Adidas Retail. Hannah is a comprehensive global leader with over 25 years of experience at a senior level across different retail landscapes. Hannah leads the retail operations team, responsible for all stores worldwide in driving innovation and trends to elevate stores towards the future of retail and deliver operational and sales excellence, training and development, profit protection and strategic planning to ensure future success. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Next, we have Karen Blackett, OBE, UK Country Manager at WPP, the world's largest marketing services group. And yes, she has two jobs, Group M UK CEO, the world's leading media investment company. Karen is a proven business leader with a track record in creating vibrant cultures, energizing teams, and consistently delivering business growth and success. Karen was the first woman to top the Power List at #1. In November 2018, she won the Inspirational Leader category at the Ethnicity Awards and was appointed Race Equality Business Champion by the UK Prime Minister. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much, and it is an absolute privilege and pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Amanda Liajala, Diversity and Business Engagement Lead Officer at City of London. Amanda is a senior diversity and inclusion leader, passionate about facilitating equitable and sustainable change. She has over 17 years experience working in business management across local authority departments. Within the HR business function, Amanda leads on the equality, diversity, and inclusion agenda, as well as managing and supporting 6 staff networks. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you very much, Monique. I can't express how much of a privilege it is to be here today. Thank you.
Lastly, we have our guest of honor, a woman who I have admired and referenced as a source of strength and resilience throughout my life. Founder and chairperson at Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation, Baroness Lawrence of Clarendon, OBE. Baroness Doreen Lawrence is an advocate in providing a voice to the voiceless through her commitment to inequalities in society and globally, and her dedication to providing opportunities to young people that were tragically denied of their son Stephen by his senseless murder. She was awarded the OBE for services to community relations in 2003, and since then has been made Life Peer in the House of Lords in 2013. She has won praise for her tireless dedication to community, anti-racism, and other causes close to her heart. And she was recently named the most powerful woman in the country by the BBC. Her spirit and resilience and demand for a better way have genuinely changed an institution at the core of British life. Baroness Doreen Lawrence's persistent effort in seeking justice for Stephen's murder led to an investigation into claims of police corruption. She remains an example of leadership as a powerhouse of courage, resilience, quietly persuading young people to have the confidence to overcome the barriers and hurdles that they face in life, providing a legacy of hope through educational opportunities, community cohesion, and career advancement. Welcome, Baroness Doreen Lawrence.
Thank you so much. Listening to all of that, I usually say is that I look over my shoulder to see who you're talking about, because the fact that so much has happened, and where I didn't set out to make these things happen. But when you have a child that you honored so much, and he no longer has a voice, you needed to be that voice for him. And that's what I've tried to do over the years, is to speak on his behalf. And what I'm doing tonight is to thank you all for the support that you've given me and my family over the last 28 years.
And we're so appreciative of your work. Wow, again, welcome, ladies. I'm just beside by myself tonight. Thank you all for being here today. I know I provided some background to your careers, which alone is deeply inspiring. What I'm particularly interested in right now is really hearing about your journeys. So I wanted to open up by asking you to spend a few minutes just summarizing your career journeys today, particularly paying some attention to the highs and lows in your earlier careers, so our younger audiences may relate. Baroness Doreen Lawrence, maybe start with you.
Okay, my career started from NatWest Bank. I was a bank clerk, working in the City of London. It was a clearing house, so we sort of dealt with used checks and talk about bank and balances. We could not leave until we balanced every penny, every evening. So it doesn't matter how long it takes, that is what happened. And to me, a part of my lows, because I suppose in the 70s when I started working, race relation was always been within employment. And in the bank, we had like different grades. And once you get to the top of your grade, you move to the next one. So I got to the top of my grade 1. And so, of course, I expected to move it to grade 2 and then to be paid for grade 2. And that didn't happen. And so I went to my manager and I said, can you tell me why? I am now completing my grade 1, I'm into my grade 2, but I still have not moved and I'm not being paid either. And he sort of looked at me and just said to me, well, you don't expect the bank to pick up and give you money just like that. And that's a sort of experience that I think a lot of our people of color face, especially when you're quite young. So you don't know how to challenge your manager, you don't know how to challenge. So that was my very first experience. But saying that within the bank, there people was, I would say people was positive, and there was very few of Black women at a time. I remember only seeing 3. So if you think of a huge room, and that's when they start introducing computers. And for me, I was so excited about that. And so I picked up really quickly. And so, if you have an error, you have to know how to get rid of that error so you can move on. And most of the girls didn't know how to do that. So they used to call me, oh, Doreen, could you come and help me do this? And that was my high, because that is something I really learned really quickly. I think my lows now is not doing social media and all the rest of it that we all do now. But at that time, the computers that's just been introduced into the banks, that was for me, that was a really, really great time for me. And as I moved forward into my careers, I think by then I stopped to have my family. Then I went back into work again. And then I was working in schools as a special needs helper. And that was really, for me, is seeing how young children, how they learn, and also what it is that I need to do to help them. We used to have supply teachers come into our school, and they had no idea of how to manage a class or to get them settled. And that's what I used to do. And one day, one of the teachers said to me, Doreen, you're wasted here. What you need to do is go off and train to be a teacher. You've got me perspectives, and that's what I did. I didn't have any A-levels at the time, so I had to do an access course, which is what, so it gave you the equivalent of your A-levels. And so I went into university. So by then, my 3 children were growing up. And I presume by 93, I was doing a humanities degree. And that's when everything just went wrong. Because coming back from my field trip, expecting for Stephen to come home, and he didn't come home. And so I think that's when my life changed. And to take me to another level, to where I started at the Stephen Lawrence Charitable Trust back in 1998. And then for me, it was I was working at a university also. I forgot about that. Working at a university. So I was a financial advisor to students. And that I loved, because then that gave me the responsibility of supporting students. They used to come, especially mature students. So I know what that was like when I was studying. So it just gave me the opportunity to give them my experience of what it was when I was a student. So then, as I said, went into working for the trust. And that was another level, because I needed to, where Stephen was not able to be get into architecture like he wanted to. So it's my opportunity now to give that opportunity to other young people who wanted that. And over the years, I sort of developed that work with architectural practices, understanding all the grades of students had to be studied. You have grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. I had no idea about that. So that was a steep learning curve for me. Working in a charity, which I knew nothing about, understanding architecture, how the practices were. And as for the students, I loved every moment, and every student I met, I could tell you their name back in the time, because there was one day, one of the students came to see me to apply for the bursary, and she was late. She came with a family friend and a baby, and she was so late. I said, I'm sorry, I won't be able to do the interview with you because I've got another student waiting. And she said to me, I'll wait. And when I was doing the interview with her, it was amazing. She was 18. She's been on her own since she's about 16. She's got herself through her A-level. And I just think this is what the trust is about. This is what we are here, is to help you. And she's gone on to achieve so much in her life. And I'm so proud that that day I gave her the opportunity of waiting and doing the interview with her. So that's just a tip of the iceberg of where I've been or what I've been doing in the last, say, 30 years.
Wow, thank you. And it's quite interesting in having your own character be one of perseverance when you identified that as a strength in the other young person, and she said that she wanted to wait. That's why you kind of carried that through and allowed that interview to take place. So that's really interesting that that kind of came back around full circle. Thank you for that, Baroness Doreen. And Hannah, what about you? Could you just summarize your journey for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think trying to summarize 28 years in retail in 3-5 minutes is really difficult. But I think if I really look at my younger self and look at where I started, I was lucky enough to go to university and came out with a fashion degree specialized in knitwear. And you think, what do you do with that afterwards? Because it's not a vocational course. So you can't expect coming out of university to go into high-flying jobs. And I did. I looked really critically at that time is how do I go into a role or a company that will have a formalized training program that will support my further development? And so I went to Harrods. I moved to London. I was in Nottingham at university, and I moved to London on a very shoestring pay in terms of the salary that I got at the time, because I worked as a sales assistant on the shop floor in Harrods, to get in, to then get onto the executive training scheme, which actually really kick-started my career. So I was on the shop floor as a sales assistant, and being a sales assistant, you know, you can make it as fun or as boring as you want. And you realize, you know, in the morning hours when you have to clean all the fixtures, tidy the racks, put the fitting room stock away, doing all the things that are sort of quite mundane, you have to make every job interesting. And so I started with a little black book and started doing things like clienteling. So when clients would come in, I'd take their details, I'd then phone them when collections came in, and making sure that then I sort of worked as a personal shopper, but really I was a sales assistant. So I think looking back at those journeys, I was just trying to make every job I do a bit of me, to bring my authentic self to work. And I love fashion, I love design, and that's why I chose Harrods, because they have the best fashion collections in the world. So then I got onto the executive training scheme, and I thought, I'm going to show up every day and do my best at what I deliver. So I do show up. I'm intentional. I come in and I try and do the things that mean a difference to me in the areas of the positions I love. And I continued that ethos. And I was lucky enough to be recognized with mentors or with champions that supported my growth journey. And as I continued to do this growth change, I had a young family, or a young daughter at the time. And in a new job that I went into, there was so much gender bias that I didn't even tell the company I had a child, because it was all men. And at that point in my career, it was a few years ago now, but at that point, I knew that there would be bias, and people would consider me that I couldn't fully commit my time because I'm a mum, or I couldn't be the intentional leader that I wanted to be because I might have constraints with family. And I didn't want that bias following me, so I didn't tell anybody. And I nailed that job because I showed up every day, and I was intentional in what I did, and I made it fun, and I supported other people's careers. And then they were shocked that actually I said, I've got to go and collect my daughter. And it was like, wow, how did you not show us? And you had to almost feel that you had that trust then. And I think since then I've gone on to run big companies and lots of multiple stores, and just taken every one as, what's the opportunity, what's the untapped potential in that job that I could do differently, to seek to learn. So I never chase titles. I hate using titles. It makes me feel really uncomfortable. For me, it's about Hannah. What does Hannah deliver, and what's she going to do in that role that's different, that will support other people's growth also, and bring other people on the journey? And I think that's what I've done all the way through my role. I moved to Europe 7 years ago now with another company, and ran Europe at that time. And I learned different things then, complexities of Europe, different languages, different cultures, understanding what that would mean, different complexities with legal, legal rights to do with employment, and so you constantly seek to learn. I would never take on a job if I felt it was easy and I could just do it and it was a title and I just did it as a job. To me, my job is my lifestyle. It has to be passionate, because I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about giving something back and doing something different that will support and nurture future talent growth, and making sure that you open doors for others. So yeah, I think now in Germany with Adidas, in my role, being here for 3 years, absolutely love it. Opening more doors all the time, given new doors and new opportunities all the time. So I think, yeah, my curiosity and thirst to learn is something that's been with me for the last 28 years.
Wow, thank you for that, Hannah. It's quite weird because there's a lot of similarities between you and I. You're probably not aware, but I certainly understand the challenges, having studied fashion at university, and that challenge in trying to get into a corporate career path. It's quite a difficult alignment and positioning that you need to go through. So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. And what about you, Karen? You've held C-suite positions now for over a decade. What's been your journey?
So I when I was little, I remember sitting in the good room at my mum and dad's house in Reading. And when I was allowed to go into the good room and watch TV, I was fascinated by everything on the TV, not just the programs, but all the ads. And it was just, and I would sit there and I would try and come up with what I thought were better ads, better ideas, better storyboards, ideas on casting, even though I didn't know that's what it was called. And I'd sit there and think about ads, and I'd do the same on radio, but I had no idea how to even get into that area, because that wasn't a career field that my mum and dad, who were first generation immigrants from Barbados to the UK, knew anything about. And I think, my mum and dad wanted me to have a profession. So they wanted me to be a lawyer, or a doctor or an accountant. And I'm pretty sure Barbados and Ireland of about 270,000 have got 200,000 lawyers. Everyone's a lawyer. But that just wasn't my path. It wasn't my passion. I had no idea how to get into this sort of media and advertising and marketing world. Genuinely no idea. And we didn't know anyone connected to that world. So I studied what I loved. So I was fortunate, like Hannah, and was able to go to university. And I'm very proud to now be Chancellor of that university that I went to. So I went to the University of Portsmouth. I'm now their Chancellor. And I studied geography because I loved geography. And actually advertising and marketing are full of geographers because it's full of people that don't know what they want to do when they finish. So I studied geography. I had a part of my degree which was a statistics module. And when I finished university, I spent a lot of time researching the industry, researching the different parts of the industry. I didn't know that there was a difference between ad agencies and media agencies. I had no idea until I started really looking into it. And I'd subscribe to the industry magazine, so I'd get to understand more about what the news was in the industry. And then I started applying for role after role after role and get rejection after rejection after rejection, because unfortunately the advertising industry was very small, very closed, nepotism is rife, and I wasn't connected to anybody. I didn't go to the I went to university, but not the right university, so I didn't know how to get in. And it was literally by applying to an ad in the Independent newspaper for a media auditor, which needed the stats up. They wanted somebody analytical. That's how I got into the industry, because at the time the company I applied to was attached to a media agency. I was invited to a first interview, invited back to a second interview, but at the same time they sort of saw something in me and said, you know what, we think you should interview for a different part of the company, go and interview to be a planner and a buyer. And that's how I got my foot in the door. And it was a huge, huge privilege to actually get into an industry which was so hard to get into. And then I remember getting in, and I remember my first agency was a top 3 agency, and there were 3 black people in the entire company. It was myself, my immediate boss, and the receptionist, and that was it. And I remember thinking, this is so odd, because we're trying to advertise, you know, washing machines or Mars bars or soap powder or book, or we're advertising everyday things that all of us consume and use. Yet there was no input from anyone that looked like me to that creativity and to those stories. And it's only once you're in, you realise actually creativity should be enhanced by more diversity, by more people from different backgrounds coming and building and talking and creating together. So I sort of stayed at that agency, and I remember then, you know, first entry level in, this has got to change. This isn't right. There's nobody telling my mum and dad's story. There's nobody telling my story. That's got to change. I don't see me in any of these brands that I'm advertising. And I sort of stayed in that role. It was a brilliant agency. And then I started to move around, because that's what you have to do, move around in order to get more experience, in order to increase your money. And I found an agency which I loved. It was a tiny agency. I remember I left a huge one to go to this tiny agency. And this tiny agency was then bought by another agency. And I found a home. I found where I belonged. I found a bunch of people that complemented each other, were hungry, were humble, creative, and embraced diversity and difference. And that agency became Mediacom. I became privileged enough to become the CEO of Mediacom several years ago. but I did lots of different roles. So I did a huge range of roles. I didn't stay in one department and go from the most junior level to the most senior. I purposely jumped around, and I purposely jumped around so that I could get the experience, and so that when I got into a leadership role, I've more or less done every role in an agency. And that helps you build empathy with your team because you know what it is that they have to do to deliver. I think it helps you be a bit better leader because you can understand where conflict and tension can exist. And for me, it also helped me realize the areas that I'm good at, areas that I'm not so good at, and helped me shape my career. So all right, not to be good at everything. There's stuff and areas that you can excel at. You then work and collaborate as part of your team with people that complement your own skill set. So for me, finding where I belonged, finding where I could have a voice, and purposely zigzagging in my career, I think has helped me. So not changing for the sake of it, but changing to get more experience, changing to find out what I'm good at. So I've done marketing roles, I've done planning roles, I've done strategy roles. I've worked in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. I've moved around in order to strengthen the breadth of my experience. And that's helped me learn as well, because like Hannah, I'm quite curious about people. And you get creativity when you can fuse different people's experiences together.
Wow, Karen, thank you so much. Again, lots of things that I'm actually relating to you on, particularly like when I started my career journey about 15 years ago and having that feeling of being one of very few Black faces. So certainly know how daunting that is. But again, learning so much from you just in thinking about how to move about in one organization and diversify your experiences primarily from an empathy perspective. So thank you for sharing that perspective. And Amanda, can we move on to you? Can you provide a bit of your journey, please?
So my journey is very different to the others, I think, ever so slightly. So I started work in an employment agency for people with disabilities. And that was probably one of the most challenging and inspirational jobs I've ever done to date. And the reason I say that is because I'd come out of university. I did a business and finance HND. I didn't do a degree, but it was like, well, at the time, I'm so in awe of Hannah, and because I wanted to do fashion design or interior design. But my dad, I'm from Jamaican parentage, my dad said, people don't make money off of art until they're dead. So you better find something else to do. I'm proud that you're going to university, but you're not doing that. So I had to go through clearing, and I ended up doing business and finance. So that was never my forte. I wanted to draw. However, I worked for this agency and I found my feet. I found my ability to really listen and learn from people, to draw on disadvantage and build strength. And from that experience, I started to challenge myself to want more. And so I just brought with me to work every day determination to do better, determination to learn, determination to ensure that these people who were living with disadvantage that was different to just being Black, disadvantage where people spoke to the person behind them, not them themselves. And I became almost a workhorse. I just did everything and anything that anybody asked me to do. And somehow, in doing that, an opportunity was afforded to me, and I ended up doing a big investigation across the organization. The head of audit and investigation at the time couldn't believe how many hours I could work in a day. I got my first speeding event as part of that challenge because I'd be going home at 2 o'clock in the morning and the road was clear. So of course I just drove as fast as I could to get home, to sleep, to get up the next morning to start again. However, what I didn't realize that in the background, that head of audit and investigation was watching me with a fine-tooth comb. He was looking at my potential I didn't know I even had. And when we came to the end of the investigation, he said to me, I'm not going to reward you with just money. You worked tirelessly, and I cannot pay you for that. But what I can pay you with is education. And we sat down. He had a prospectus already ready for our conversation, and we looked at different options. And I ended up doing a diploma in management studies, so postgraduate diploma in management studies. And believe it or not, I always called my husband the bog-off man, because I bought one and got one free. I went there to learn and I found my husband. So, you know, I was really, really very, very lucky in everything I did as part of those 2 years of education. So I got my qualification and I found my feet. I was promoted quite swiftly, and you can imagine the haters behind me. She only got this because blah, blah, blah. And it followed. But I decided, actually, too bad. I'm going to let those voices leave. And I became a business leader, where I looked at different areas of the organization that I was working in, managing homes. I looked after people's interest. I looked at human resources and finance. I did that for a few years, and then I went on to manage a larger department looking at physical and learning difficulties. But each time learning from the people who were in those facilities, learning from them, really feeling what real disadvantage looked like. So I never felt sorry for myself in any shape or form. But once I left working in social care, because I felt I needed a change, I went on to do customer services. I became a manager of a group of what we called at the time one-stop shops. And I soon realized that was definitely for me. Going into work every day and being shouted at was not for me. So therefore I left and I went back to business engagement. And then I had a moment, and Doreen, this is where I said later on you will hear. When Stephen Lawrence died, I can't explain how that made me feel. It was cutting, because I didn't really understand what discrimination felt like, to an extent where somebody would want to kill somebody. I'd heard about it, but didn't feel it. But the day Stephen died was the day I really felt as though I was cut. I felt hurt. I went through the stages of grief, and it wasn't the first time for me, because my mum passed away when I was just 17. So as a consequence of that, I knew what grief felt like, but this was different. And it compelled me to want to know more about how you fight discrimination. And I followed Doreen right up until the Macpherson report was launched. And once it came into force, I started being part of the movement, which was then called the Black Workers Movement, and I got really heavily involved in looking at how discrimination affected people from different backgrounds. And I've been there ever since. I've gone from being a senior equality advisor to a senior principal and so on, and it's led me to where I am now. I lead on equality and business engagement in an ancient organization which lacks diversity, but really has the commitment and the and the drive to make change, and I'm able to be part of that change. Part of my journey was learning that it was okay to be me. It was okay to not be the person that everybody liked. I do equality. Really, you soon learn that you're not going to be too popular doing this role. But what I really learned from this journey to here is that sometimes whilst you're on your journey, you've got to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because without that, you will lose your way. And I'll leave it there.
Wow, thank you, Amanda. Thank you all. Your journeys are extremely powerful and unique, though there seems to be these common threads of curiosity, a desire to learn, determination, and authenticity, which I think is so powerful here, that you all brought your unique selves, your unique version of the world into your roles. Thank you so much for providing that journey summary. So when I was a little girl, my dad drummed into my head, save your pennies for your pounds, which didn't really mean much to me back then. I just thought my dad was a little bit odd because he's Jamaican, and he was just one of, like many Jamaicans, I think, that saved some money in the bank, but also had some money under the mattress. So it wasn't until when I was about 10 years old and he took me to the bank to open up a savings account with £10. And every time he would give me my £5 pocket money or birthday money, he would take me to the bank and drum the same message, save your pennies for your pounds. So then what I later realized, probably when I was about 12, I was the only one, or there was only a couple of us that had hundreds of pounds in our savings account. What I learned what that action meant at a later date was that it taught me, I guess, the principles of what the compound effect is. And that is by effort, persistency, habitual behavior habits, what that could mean in terms of an impact on your life. So my question to you is this, and we'll start with you, Karen. Has there been anyone in your life that has done or said something to you that has had a profound impact on your life?
Look, I have to agree with you that it comes from the parents. And I do think there's something about first generation to the UK where they're entering a world that they don't know well, that they're trying to guide and help. So that there are three things that particularly my dad said to me, and I think my dad probably was a massive feminist. I mean, he's passed away now, but a massive feminist for a first generation West Indian man. He was a massive feminist, and he had two daughters. And the three things that stick in my head is get comfortable being memorable. So slightly different to what you said, Amanda, get comfortable being memorable, because you're going to enter a room when you go into the world of work, and you'll probably be one of a few women in the room, and you'll probably be the only black person in the room, and you're going to stand out. Get comfortable standing out. Don't try and blend. Don't try and hide. Get comfortable being memorable and use it. And that, I think, really helped in those situations where I was the only one, which was most of the case in my working life, was the only one. I didn't shy away from it, used to it, knew it, embraced it. So get comfortable being memorable. The sort of family motto is learn, earn, serve. Learn your craft, earn your money, serve, make sure you give back. So make sure that you help others, because it's a difficult journey. You know, that the industry I entered into is very tight knit and closed. How are you going to widen the door to let more people in? How are you going to ensure that the stories that we tell and the content that we create are representative of this beautiful fruit salad that is Britain? So learn, earn, serve, learn your craft, earn your money, make sure you give back. So I've got a real sense of public duty. And then the last area is celebrate your difference, which goes back to that comfortable being memorable. It's, you know, people will see you as different and embrace it. So celebrate difference. So for me, one of the things that I always do in any team or organization that I run or lead or that I'm part of, I force diversity. Not because diversity is an issue that you have to solve, but because it's a solution to growth, it's a solution to creativity, and it's actually more fun. I find that I learn more. So that's celebrate difference, learn, earn, serve, and get comfortable being memorable, stuck in my head. And they're phrases and sayings that I repeat to my 11-year-old son.
Wow, thank you. Hannah, what about you?
It's funny, there's lots of similarities. I think from my parents, it does start with your value and understanding your intrinsic value and what you bring. And I was always brought up with a self-belief from a very young age that if I wanted to be the Prime Minister, then why couldn't you be the Prime Minister? You know, there wasn't a ceiling of which they taught me as a, you know, I didn't have huge career ambitions at a young age. I just wanted to learn and seek and make a difference and try and do whatever seat at the table I had was to have a voice to make difference for others and bring open doors. And so that I think the nice thing for me is that I've always had this, but why not? You know, that sort of philosophy of why can't we do things? So that's why my thirst for knowledge and thirst for learning and continual, you know, pushing myself to think differently and making sure, exactly like you said, it's making sure that people around the table are different, that we're not all the same, that you want to seek those differences, to champion and celebrate those, and making sure that different ingredients makes us much, much better in terms of baking that cake. You know, if we have all the same ingredients, it won't be the same. So I think for me, mentorship and having those champions of change and champions that champion you, that continually reassure me in my self-belief that, Hannah, you can do this. You earned a seat at that table. You know, my partner Owen says to me every day, Hannah, you're brilliant. You nailed that. You did. So have that champion from a very young age as parents and then through your life. And my kids, you know, fully supportive, fully, that they're champions behind me, always there, supporting and nurturing my vision or where I'm going, because they know I'm not doing it for me. I'm not in it for myself. I'm in it to make a difference for others, so that if I do get into bigger leadership roles, that I have that self-belief, that I can break those barriers. I can make sure that I open those doors to people, to make sure that what I do is making the difference of what my parents taught me is, Hannah, you can do this. And so I show up every day with that attitude. And a lot of my team in Herzogenaurach, where I work now, will say, yeah, you know, my motto in life is be demanding, less accepting. Don't accept no. Don't accept you can't. Don't accept those barriers of discrimination. Don't accept the, you know, the inequalities that we have. We have to be the champions and guardians of change. And that's always been what I've been brought up to believe. So although I've been 28 years in retail is almost the commodity. It's almost the output of the job. It's the value that I bring, that I think of what I've been brought up to believe, of what I can make a difference in. So making a difference through your own self-belief and not seeing barriers, but being demanding, less accepting, and accepting that, you know, you can't just accept that things are there and can't change. And I think Baroness Lawrence, you know, has been that. And that's why I think a huge kudos to the huge work that trying to overcome those barriers and never giving up. So that be demanding, less accepting is how I live my life.
Thank you. I love that mantra, don't accept. And also the analogy about ingredients, different ingredients. That's what makes up a delicious recipe. And Amanda, what about you?
So, like everyone else, I think the main person has to be my dad. You know, he's been my rock since I was his only daughter. As he would say, I was his one daughter. And I'm sure those of you who are West Indian will know how to twist that. But I was his only daughter, and I was quite a sensitive child. Had my own mind. I had strength of character. However, I would be crying all the time because I was that child who, when I offered a person some of my crisp, I'd offer them the packet and they would take most of the content out, and I would then look inside and think, well, they didn't leave much for me. And so my dad would then say, so when they offered you a packet of crisps, what do they do? And I said, they take one out and give me one. So why are you offering them the whole packet? And I would really just keep crying and doing the same thing because it was in me to be that way. But part of me was just kind, that I wanted, you know, to share what I had with others. And then one day, I think I'd cried, and I was probably, what we would say today, getting on my dad's very last nerve. And he said to me, listen, Manda, you can't keep judging everybody off your own standards, or those tears will never run dry. You've got to want to help people to be better. So if they do you an injustice, the tears changes nothing, but your words will. Find your words and encourage others to do better. And that's what I've lived my whole life on. You know, I encourage others to be better, to want to do better, to strive, not for perfection, but perfect it if you can, but just strive to do better. I was lucky enough to be on a call with Stuart earlier on where he said that he wanted every day to be better than the day before. And that's the same thing. It's about striving and encouraging others to do better. So when I'm doing my work, I'm older now, wiser now. I'm not a senior manager that pulls the ladder up behind me. I will always strive to bring the younger ones that are behind me with me. I encourage them. I will give talks to them. I put time aside for anyone who wants to come and talk to me. And that is what I've found has been key. And I had that talk when I was 18. So that was many years ago, and I'm not going to share how many that was.
Thank you, Amanda, and kudos to your dad. Very wise words. Baroness Doreen Lawrence, any points from you on that?
Yes, I think one thing I'll say before I talk about my own is that to have such fantastic women on this panel, I'd like to see you all take part in helping to nurture some of our young people that I'd like to see join the foundation. I think that is what we need. We need to be able to empower our young into achieving what they would like in life. And I think that's what I try to do, is always try to do that. But listening to all you ladies here tonight, I'm just writing all these things down, so yes, we could definitely do it for you all to come and support the foundation in any way that you can. For me, it was my grandmother. I was born in Jamaica, so I didn't know my mother until I was about 9. So I had my grandmothers to always think about and look back on. And one of the things, because she was quite a tall woman, because you know how short I am, I'm not sure where my height came from. But everybody in the district sort of respected her. They came to her for advice. And that is what I think I try to follow, is follow in her footsteps. So over the years, especially when I was made Chancellor of De Montfort University, and I remember standing on the platform and they were reading all this citation, all I could think about was my grandmother, how proud she would have been of me. And all I kept saying, if my grandmother could see me now, because I know how proud she would have been. So it's following in her footsteps, it's her guidance. I remember seeing that she gave to so many people, and that's what I wanted to do. I did that with my children, and I tried to do that with all the young people that I've met over the years, whether they want to be an architect, those who want to be a journalist. So that has always been my thing, is to give something back, give them the encouragement, the support, the mechanism that they need. I mentioned about the young lady who turned to her interview really late. She was somebody, I remember saying to her, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself. And when she started talking, You know, her brothers was in prison. Her mum had mental illness, so she was with her grandmother. And by then, at 18, she was living on her own. She had her own flat she was living in. And she took herself and got her A-level and got herself into university. And that's the sort of young people I want to be able to see what we can do to help, because sometimes they don't have that support mechanism within their own lives. And what can we do, especially within the foundation, what can we do to help those young people so that they can feel valued and respected? So as I said, when I was listening to everybody here, I just think it's a fantastic what we all have to contribute. And sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, because it's just something we just do automatically and without thinking that we're doing anything. And being the only Black person in a room, I think I spent a lot of my life being in so many things that I'm the only Black person there. And when people write to me and they say, oh, Doreen, could you do this? I'm thinking, I'm sure there's somebody else. But they're always coming to me. And I would always try, if I personally can't do it myself, I look to find someone else who can give them that help that they need. So being the only Black person, that's something for me. When I think about during Stephen's case, when one of the officers said to me, oh, I've never met anybody like you before. And I said, well, there's millions of people like me. And sometimes what people try to do is for you to feel they single you out in some way, and then also so you can think, oh, great I am. And as Amanda said about pulling the ladder up, that's not something I do. You know, we must always stretch our hand out to help those that we can. And it's sometimes a divide and rule that they do with us. And if we're not careful, we fall into that trap. So for me, I try never to do that. What can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? And that's what's always been, and I think I've taken that from my grandmother, what she was doing in Jamaica, in the district, what she did to help the people around her. So all I want to do is to celebrate all you women here today, because I think it's just fantastic what you all have achieved. And sometimes on your own, because sometimes, you know, you don't have that person standing next to you giving you that support, and you have to support yourself. But for those that have the support, I think it's really fantastic. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Baroness Lawrence. Yeah, I completely agree. There's this servitude that I'm really hearing from you that's coming from your parents, from the advice that you were given, your grandmother, but it's really shown itself. So moving on, I was thinking about significant periods in my life, and there's been many, but I think my formative teens, when I made the choice to go into foster care, would have been, for me, the most significant period in my life. And I think that's primarily because my experiences back then were just so limited. So I just had no idea. I just couldn't fathom the positive impact, exposing myself to a new environment, to a completely new type of relationship that I hadn't been exposed to before. What that impact could have on me as an individual. So Hannah, can we open with you? At what age do you feel was the most significant period in your life, and why?
It's a really tough question. And I've had lots of different answers for different reasons, but I think it's now, because now I have the biggest remit to make change. So, you know, my younger self and those starting journeys and going from sales assistant to the next role is all about showing up and doing what you can do. But I wasn't necessarily running big teams or making a difference or getting a seat at a large table where I can have a vocal voice about creating change. So now, you know, 28 years on in my career and have being vice president for an incredible brand, I can make a difference. I can make a difference in more people's lives that I won't even recognize because I haven't touched their lives. But the choices that we make and the teams we hire and, you know, making sure that we're opening doors for people. And I mentor a lot of women. I mentor 15 women in the company and outside the company. You know, I'm on LinkedIn. If you've seen me, I'm active a lot, and I help people write their CVs that are just applying for different jobs, not for Adidas. And I think for me, that's about making the biggest difference. So the significant journey and shift that I've done in my career isn't about, you know, the functional expertise, although that's been learning my craft. It's through people. and people, and making sure that they have, you know, the creative space, the safe space to be open and fail sometimes and learn through their failure and see it as not as a failure, but as a learning, and having those open discussions and creating that culture of inclusion in a role that I'm in, which is a most senior role that I've done in my company, allows me to have that biggest platform where I can make that biggest creative change for different people's lives. And, you know, you can really support careers in you know, supporting applications, but really being the advocate of change in a role that I'm doing. And I'm lucky enough to be on the Creating a Culture of Inclusion Acceleration Committee at Adidas. And so we've driven different change through the culture of the company and made decisions. And I got a seat at that table because I asked to be there. I wanted, like I said, be demanding, less exempting. I wanted to be part of that movement and change. And in 3 years at Adidas, I've loved every minute, because me being demanding, less accepting has opened more doors, not just for me. I'm leaving the doors open, and I'm supporting other people's growth. And I don't look down at people unless I'm helping them up. You know, that we've got to continue that cycle of growth. And so the significant period for me, I was thinking, was it sales assistant to the next step? That's very career orientated, but really it's now, and whatever I do in the next time before I retire. And after I retire, I will continue to do the journey of supporting others, because I think that's, like I said in the last question, that's been how I've been brought up. It isn't about me. And I feel very uncomfortable if it's about me. I always think it's about what you give and what you can bring. And that's you know, society, and that's what we should do for humanity and do the right thing for other people. So yeah, I would say, in reflection, it's now.
Thank you. And I think I'm going to take that quote from you, because I just think it's brilliant. I'm not looking down on people unless I'm helping them up. Thank you. And Amanda, what's your take? The question is the most significant thing in your life.
I would have to. I think it has to be now. It has to be a moment that we have right now to make real and sustainable change. The conversations that we've had over the past year since the murder of George Floyd has significantly changed the space, the diversity and inclusion space. We're having conversations that we've had before. Because when I think back to 1993, when Stephen was killed, and then, you know, fast forward to 1999, which was a significant time in my life. I had my first child, and you know, the Macpherson report was released. And when I looked at my daughter, I thought, I've got to be part of this change, because I've got to do it for her. But today, I really think that this is my time to make a change for those that are coming up behind me. Their experience just can't be the same as mine. It has to be change for all. When I looked at the Black Lives Matter protest and I saw the sea of faces, Black, Asian, white, different people from different backgrounds coming together to actually really stand in solidarity with each other to bring about change. This is my significant moment, because when I work, whilst I'm at work at the corporation, I've met some phenomenal people, some people who are at grades that I can't even believe how they've stayed in them, because they are so phenomenal in terms of their impact, but they have nobody to nurture them. They had nobody. But now with these conversations, more people are opening doors, more people are having conversation. People are not looking at hierarchy in the way that they did before. I've often been somebody that, you know, lots of people say, I really hate walking down the road with you, because do you just know everyone? I speak to anybody. I speak to everyone in my organization, outside of my organization. And that is key. You don't know the experience of the person who you walked past until you stop and say, hi, how are you? And actually wait and listen. So today is a significant time for me. It's the moment I found that my only way of making change is by being part of the journey.
Thanks. We've come leaps and bounds for sure, but there's certainly a lot more to do and a longer journey to head towards. Baroness Lawrence, what would you comment?
What would I come? I think for me, it was going into the House of Lords. You know, who would have thought? I keep thinking about this little girl coming from Jamaica, and here I am. It's like being at the top table. But I think for me to be there is for me to lend my voice. It's not for me just to sit and allow people to browbeat me. But I think sometimes, because sometimes I'm so quiet, a lot of people think, oh, she doesn't really say very much. I remember I was, if you want to put a question down, this is before COVID, you had to arrive at a certain time and wait in a corridor until 2 o'clock. And only 4 people was allowed to put a question down per day. And this is my first time, because I'm really nervous about this, because I've never sort of got up and spoke out and asked or a question before. So I arrived and there was 3 people in front of me, and I asked a question because it wasn't 2 o'clock yet. So I said, who's in front of me? And this man said to me, you should know your place. And I looked at him and I said, I know my place, thank you very much. And he said, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. Of course he did. And those are sort of challenges that it doesn't matter where you are, those challenges still exist. And so I put my name down to ask the question back in March, since the Brexit. And I wanted to ask a question around fisheries, because you read all the things about the fishermen, what Brexit has done for them, that the government, all these big promises, but they never got that. And one of the peers said to me, said to me, Doreen, why are you asking a question around fisheries? Has something happened? I was on the phone, so I couldn't answer her then. I kept thinking, why would she come and ask me a question like that? Did she ask that question to other peers? So when I got the opportunity, because I've asked questions around race, you know, all different things I've asked questions about, but fisheries, I presume she said that's probably out of my remit. And she goes, no, I didn't mean anything by it. But yes, you do mean something by it. You know, why are you singling me out and asking me that question? So today, my big question was today, and I've been trying to put a question in about people referral unit. This is where kids are excluded and they go and they're put in these units. They're not really learning anything. It's like a stopgap. So no education is happening to them. They come out, no qualification. So I've been wanting to ask these questions for ages. I've been sort of keep trying to put my name down. Eventually, I wrote and said, is there a reason why I'm not able to ask a question? And I didn't want to come down to race. I didn't want to come down to any of us. I try to be open as I can to ask why I'm not being able to get my name down to ask the question. And then the next thing I know is that they wrote to me and said, yes, you can have a question, but when is that question? Today, the 22nd of April. And I thought, I can't say no if I've been making such a fuss about getting my name down. So the question I wanted to ask was, what's the government has been doing since the lockdown for young people in these pupil referral unit? Is there anything happening that's going to support them to get back into mainstream school, considering the majority of those children are young Black boys? And I think the answer I got didn't really, I mean, so the government will tell you, oh, we spend hundreds of millions of pounds on areas of this, but it still doesn't answer the question, because those children are still languishing in those units and not receiving the proper education that would help them in their future. So today is one of those days that those things I didn't really want to do, but had I said no, then I was making a fuss. So I find being in a House of Lords is something that you always have to be using your voice, always have to be challenging, because there's always somebody in there ready to tell you that that is not where you should be. That's not where you should be. But today I sat in front of my computer here to ask my question, because things have been done virtually now. Everything's been done virtually. So that's what I did today. And I felt quite good. I was able to ask that question and challenge the government to make sure that these young kids, especially young black boys, have been given a decent education, because we know where they end up. They end up in prison. They end up on the streets, they end up selling drugs. So it's for me, while I'm there, is to use my voice in order to try and make some difference to other people's lives where I can.
Thank you. And we're certainly grateful to have you challenging the status quo and using your voice, particularly for the young. Karen, moving on to you.
Look, there are several moments for me which have been pivotal in terms of, things that I've learned and experienced and have shaped how I've grown and developed. I'm here as a failed athlete. That was my first love, athletics. So I was a sprinter and a long jumper and a relay runner. And athletics taught me about success and failure. It taught me about resilience. It taught me to be focused. It taught me to train. It taught me to rehearse and practice, all of which I take into my career now. So that sort of discipline of always going in prepared, or I used to, practice over and over again on my starters blocks. I could win the 100 meters in the first 30 if I got a good start, and I'd practice over and over and over again. So that, practice, but also knowing when you haven't done well. So managing disappointment and learning from it, I sort of got from my athletic career. So, that was in my teens, long time ago. But I learned from that. I would then say, moving forward, I think, and we've all sort of touched on it, having people in your life who are brilliant sponsors, who see your potential. And I've been fortunate that I have had people that have spoken up for me in the rooms that I did not belong in or did not have access to, and could speak up and talk about my talent. So, I have had that throughout my career, and you've heard it from all the ladies on the panel. It's doing that for others now, speaking up for people that don't have access to the rooms that we're now in, because I've experienced the benefit of that. And I'd have to say a pivotal moment was when I first got a life coach. I've had a life coach for over 20 years now. A guy called Adrian Green runs a company called Pressure Point, an ex-athlete. So I think we have that and bonded over, our shared love of focus and competition. And, I'm very quite structured in how I do things. And he's been brilliant for me personally and professionally, because I think we all need a coach in our life. And clearly Baroness Lawrence does that for so many young people in terms of coaching them. So I have a life coach, and that life coach helped me. And I sort of got a life coach probably my late 20s, early 30s. And that's been brilliant for me. And then when I became a mum for the first time, so I'm a single mum, I split with my son's father when he was 5 weeks old. And again, that was pivotal in terms of me role modeling how you can be a successful career mum, how I'm bringing my whole self to work. I'm not going to, shy away from having him. He is part of who I am. I am just as, and I know exactly what, was referred to earlier, that people have a bias, that people think that you're going to be more focused on your family life than your work life. But I set my stall out because I was very conscious that I'm role modeling for a number of young women that will become mums and other mums, that you can be as productive, if not more productive, because you've got other stuff to do once you leave the office, that you're as committed. Just the way you work and the shape of how you work has changed. That doesn't mean the output changes, hardly at all. The output changes, just the shape of how you work changes. So For me, I talk a lot about work-life blend, and I try and role model to other working parents that it's not either or, you can have both.
Thank you.
Successful career and parenthood.
Yeah, I love what you said about role modeling for younger women and demonstrating productivity and motherhood, which I definitely think is important, and certainly was a challenge for me when I had my daughter, being in sales, primarily male environments. I completely get that. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to ask for more succinct answers on the next round of questions. So thinking about your younger self, if you could speak to her and give her a message that could change her life, what would that message be? And we'll start with you, Amanda.
I thought I think this is a really difficult question, but if I could speak to my younger self, I would say, find your fear, find mechanisms to deal with it, and bring your full self to work. Be determined to do the best that you can do in everything that you do, but bring people along with you every step of the way. But whilst you're on that journey, those that hold you back, let them go.
Yeah. And Hannah, what message would you give your younger self?
So many. So many to give my younger self. I think for me, it's what's your unique point? What's your unique selling point that makes you different? What makes you stand out? And I think I've worked over the last 20 odd years on building myself as my brand. What's my value? How do I show up? You know, what do I love? And I think you're successful in your job if you love it, because then you nail it every single day, because you're thinking about what differences you're bringing, how you can do things in a different way that will make a bigger difference, whether it's business, personal, or professional. So I think there's one is do follow your heart in terms of what you'd love to do, because then it doesn't become a job, it's a lifestyle. And also celebrate your uniqueness and make sure that is celebrated outwardly, because that makes you a different ingredient. You don't want to be like everybody else, because then you're just competing against everybody else. What makes you unique? What can you bring to that role to make sure that then you really stand up in a way that gives you that bigger voice and that seat at the table? So yeah, a couple of things there.
Thanks, Hannah. And Karen, in a few words, what would you say to your younger self?
Look, Hannah's point about having a personal brand is very relevant. It really is, and totally agree. I also would say network as much as you can, because when you network, you get to meet a range of different people from different backgrounds, and you never know when those people are going to become your cheerleaders to help you fly higher, to pick you up when it's times which are difficult. But also those cheerleaders and that network of people bring opportunities as well. And you never know when you can get the next opportunity. So network, turn up to events like this, because you never know who you might meet, who you might come across, who you get chatting to. And each of those, contacts could become a cheerleader and could become the next positions for you as well.
Thank you, Karen. Baroness Lawrence, what would you tell your younger self in a few words?
To have confidence. I think sometimes we can lack the confidence in ourselves when we are faced with diversity or whatever it is that we are faced. So confidence. I know many times I'll walk into a room with my shy self and not outwardly show my confidence that I have, but inwardly I do have that. So for me, is to be able to express that so other people can see and sort of, not say feed off that, but actually give you as much confidence as you give yourself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then continuing along the path of your younger self, where were you when you were 18? What were you doing at that point in your life? And where did you want to be? Baroness Doreen Lawrence, just thinking about that Stephen was only 18 when his life was sadly cut short. I'm keen to hear your thoughts to start with.
When I was 18, I started working for the bank. That's where I was when I was 18. And so I think for me, what I would have loved to have been able to have done was gone off to university, but not having the right support mechanism around me, that allow me to do that. So at 18, I was in the bank, and working with all the young girls. They were similar age to me, so we had a shared bond. But as I said, there was very few Black young women in the bank at the time. And I think when because when you have your career talk, what they did say to me and a lot of my friends is that I think it'd be really good if you could, factual work is good for you. And you just think, no, that's not what I want. And we just had that confidence in ourselves to go out and find our jobs ourselves. And like my friends and I, we all applying to banks. I'm not sure why banks were so important at the time, but we all applied for different banks like the Barclays, the Lloyds, the NatWest banks. And if my friend went to Barclays and we thought, oh, that's not where we were, so I wouldn't have gone for my interview. And we were doing that sort of thing between us. And when we went to NatWest, we said, yeah, that's the place that we want to be. And so there was 3 of us from my school that ended up working, but on different floors, doing different jobs in NatWest Bank. So yeah, that's where I was at 18.
Thank you. And Karen, back to you. Did you have your sights set on becoming a CEO at the age of 18?
No, look, I think we've said it earlier. It's literally do what you enjoy and find out what you're good at. At 18, I was lucky enough to have, gone to university. So I was in my first year at the University of Portsmouth, which, as I said, I'm now Chancellor of that university. And that university taught me so much. It taught me to challenge. It taught me to, be curious. It really, really broadened my thinking. And I got to meet people that I would never normally meet or have come across growing up in Reading. So at 18, I had university life ahead of me. I was, as I said before, I was studying geography. I knew that I loved media and advertising, but had no idea how to get into it. And when I left, I sort of left, and it was university. It was a recession, and it was rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection. So, that bounce back ability is what I sort of learned at 18 through athletics and then through rejection letters leaving university. So the idea of being a CEO absolutely was not part of my thinking process. It was learn as much as I can. It was my dad's learn, earn, serve. Just learn. And as you learn, you then build in confidence. You then surround yourself with great people that tell you why not. And changing that I can't yet, knowing full well that you'll be able to. Think that where I got to. But at 18, no, it was a world. My mind was blown through being able to meet new people and learn new things at the university.
Thank you. I want to make sure that we have enough time to take at least a couple of questions from the audience. So I'm going to go to the next question, if you don't mind, because I do want to end on this. And it's really about the legacy of Stephen Lawrence, which I believe is one that is very much founded on hope and opportunity to empower young people to be the best versions of themselves. So I'll ask you, Amanda, to start with, what's your legacy for change? What kind of legacy are you hoping for?
I think my legacy can only be one main thing, and that's be a role model for others, a change agent for real progress, and somebody who's encouraged people to be the best that they can be, to strive for better. And as Karen mentioned earlier, networking is key. Networking opens doors that you can't imagine. Doing events like this You know, I think back to what was I doing at 18? I was at university studying business and finance, something I didn't want to do. I wanted to be a fashion designer or an interior designer, and I did business. And today, my daughter is at university studying fashion design. So be what you want to be.
Thank you. And Hannah, what legacy of change are you thriving for?
To be a people champion is something I've done all the way through my career and personally as well. So to really make sure that people have the same starting line and to take away barriers, open doors and drive opportunity, making sure, and I always think of opportunity like pebbles on a beach, and I always go for the biggest pebbles and make sure I'm opening those and taking those away so that then those holes that are filled with opportunity, I leave for others. And I think I've tried to do that through everything I do personally and professionally. So yeah, it's about a people champion and taking away the barriers to make sure they're the same starting line. And that mantra, I'll never look down on someone unless you're helping them up, is truly how I think. I remember being a cleaner when I started off at university, and I know no one used to look you in the eye as a cleaner. You know, they never used to say hello. And so I make sure I speak to everybody. Like the other panelists said, I say hello to every cleaner. I make sure that they feel valued, because it doesn't matter what job you do, it's how you do it.
Absolutely. My dad's been a cleaner for a long period, so I feel exactly the same, and make sure that I have eye contact and conversation and know the names of all of the cleaners in the building. Absolutely. Karen, what about you? Your legacy for change? What are you striving towards?
So look, the core thing for me when I think about my industry sets the cultural norms, because we're creating content that everybody sees, whether that's content for brands, or whether that's, you know, content for organizations, the content that we create, whether that, you know, a book, a film, an ad, a digital piece of content that you see, that's where cultural norms come from. So for me, it's about making sure that my industry becomes more reflective of and representative of the society which we're serving. It's really important. So I feel a huge sense of responsibility in my own organisation, with WPP and with Group N, making sure that I change how our organisations look, to make sure that we have that fruit salad at every single level, because that builds creativity. But also in terms of the brands and the clients I work with, helping them connect with society so that they grow and they thrive. So for me, it's about ensuring that we have representation, but also about authentic communication, because everybody can do casting and just stick somebody in, but it's about that authentic story that we then create. And so I want to have an industry which looks very different to the one that I work in now, because like you, Monique, I'm a unicorn in my industry.
Thank you. Yeah, I certainly know what that's like, and authentic communication, even having the ability to be comfortable in your skin and being yourself, is definitely a transition I went through, and certainly a good goal to have. So thank you for that, Karen. Baroness Doreen Lawrence, I want to end with you today on the legacy of change for change that you're driving through the Stephen Lawrence Foundation Day.
Yes, I see my legacy as the foundation and what it can help to create for young people, and for Stephen's name to be seen as a role model. I think that's what I try to do, is to show the better side of what people can do. Stephen had this unique way of bringing people together. I think people are just drawn to him because of his personality, and that is how I want to see the foundation. So that's where I see my legacy is, and continues to be, because I've always said I wanted to have an organization that can wash its face without me, because it doesn't need me to be always at the front, but an organization that can wash its face, that people are drawn to it. And so I think when I think about young people, I want them to be like Stephen, to have the ambition to think ahead, think what their future can be. So that is where I see the legacy of where the foundation is. We have a lot to learn. I mean, so we're quite a new organization now, We're just over a year old. And I think what we've achieved, I think Stephen's name always seems to, it looks as if we have masses of people behind us working. And we only have a very few. We have about, what, 5 trustees. And I think all the help and support that we've had from WPP, from people like Anna, you know, it's been really fantastic. I think without you, and this is why I said Stephen's name always punch above its weight, is because of people like yourselves that come in and help us to build the dream that I want to see a lot of young people are able to, that we are able to help going forward in the future.
Thank you, Baroness Doreen Lawrence. So we do have a couple of questions, and I know we only have a few minutes left, so let me quickly try and go through these. So one question we have is, often industries are cliques or closed shops. If you do not have the right connections, we cannot get in. How can we change this? I'm going to direct this question at you, Karen. What are your thoughts there?
Look, it is so true. It genuinely is. And you have to start stalking people. You really do. Because, look, you will get leaders who want to create change and will do outreach to bring people in. And you'll get organisations that go to the same place continuously to recruit people in. You genuinely have to learn everything you can about the organisation or the industry that you want to get into. Do your homework, make sure you absolutely do your homework, find out who the players are, and keep communicating with them. Try and ask them for help, because you have to be a pretty bad person to ignore somebody that is continually asking for help. You know, we're all busy people, but everyone can find half an hour at some point in their diary just to have a video call or, you know, a telephone call with somebody to give them guidance and help. Ask for help, show that you know the industry, show that you know the brand, and literally just do your homework, absolutely do your homework, and keep trying to find different ways in. Don't get upset with rejection, because it will happen. You've got to take it on the chin, bounce back and keep going, because eventually you will come across somebody who will take the call, respond to a letter and give you an opportunity. I promise you it will happen, but do your due diligence, do your homework, find out where those organisations and brands do outreach programs, not just graduate recruitment programs, but other outreach programs to try and get a way in.
Thank you. Hannah, would you add to any of that?
I think that's completely spot on. I would echo all of that. And I think the nice thing about today is we've all said, you know, everybody's open. And I think, you know, I see sometimes people ask me for help on their CVs and they're not showcasing their uniqueness. So to get your foot in the door, you have to show how you're different and what different that attribute will bring to that company. Otherwise, companies just see standard CVs and you're not celebrating what you're going to be famous for. And I think it's really important that when people apply for jobs, they don't just do a standard application, really tailor the application to the job role and show what evidence you've got that you would bring something new to that role. I think a lot of the time standard rejections happen because we're not really articulating in our CVs what difference you're going to make in that role. It's just a standard CV, and people are then tailoring, and you're competing against all those people that are being really unique in their delivery of their CV to that job spec, and you're never going to get that first opportunity. So my ask is really be critical in what you're applying for and making sure that your suitability is there. Be the advocate driver, exactly what was said previously, you know, build up your network. You know, there's professional platforms out there, utilize them. Don't just rely on going in cold. I think we all have to be really creative in getting that first step in the door, and asking for help is exactly the right thing to do. You know, we're all human. We all have that wanting to support others' growth. And I think there's a lot of people out there that do, but just never get asked. So again, if there are leaders out there that aren't giving back, we need to question, and hopefully people listening would start to give back a lot more from this session today. But if they're not being asked, tap on their door and knock on their door and get that openness to find that application and get that video conference or that interview and be successful.
Okay, I'll try and squeeze in one final question. I know we're right on the mark. So we've got Black youth employment has been increasing. What can be done as decision makers in organisations to ensure equality of opportunity for all in workplaces? Amanda, could you just summarise in a short sentence what your thoughts are there from a diversity and inclusion perspective?
I think the only thing you can do is to remove the barriers that cause that door not to open. You need to be part of the change that you want to see, and that is key. So in terms of going back to the previous question, you've really just got to be there, know what the barriers are, and see what you can do to break them down, because that's the only way.
Thank you. Baroness Doreen Lawrence, would you add any final words to that?
I think, especially when we were working with the architecturals for students, like young people from certain backgrounds, their family knows about architect. They can open the door for their kids. They can provide the placements our young people need. And for us was making those connections with those practices and say, look, we've got students, they're talented, you know, they will be such an asset to your company. And it's always trying to, I know we have to work that extra hard in order to allow that to happen, but breaking down barriers is definitely one of them. And I think over the years, I've tried my hardest to do that, and with our young people, and it has been successful. You know, we've had so many of our students have gone into really good practice, and now a lot of them are running their own practices now, so they can sort of turn around and give a helping hand to other students that's coming up behind them.
Thank you. So I want to say a special thank you to Stuart Lawrence and the entire Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation for putting on this event, Message to My Younger Self. My message to you is that you are valued, you are worthy, so certainly believe in yourselves. The world is here for you to be the best that you can be and live your best lives. Good night all, and thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stuart Lawrence, younger brother of Stephen Lawrence, and also the project manager of this year's Stephen Lawrence Day 2021. Hello everyone, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for supporting Stephen Lawrence Day 2021 with all your messages over social media and beyond, for all the events and efforts to remember Stephen Lawrence today. I want to start off by saying a massive thank you from this morning for all the people that watched our live YouTube assembly with Ben Kadji. Thank you guys. Over 400 schools signed up and was participating in that. Right through to our community event this afternoon, and all the different groups that took part, all the people that watched these as well, all our community partners. We hope you found it inspiring as we did. The Stephen Lawrence Day Foundation is the only official charity in Stephen's name. We aim to inspire and support children and young people in classrooms, in the community, and to progress through to the careers that help them fulfill their potentials to the full. Free from discrimination is being part of Stephen's legacy as well. Please support us by being part of Stephen's legacy, which is a legacy of change, by following us on our social media channels. Visit our website, and if you can, even make a donation to help our charity to fulfill the aspirations, the goals, the mission statements that we have, which is to ensure that children and young people are supported. again, from myself and from my family and from all the people that work at the Stephen Lawrence Foundation, thank you. You have made Stephen Lawrence Day 2021 what it is. And we look forward to working with you now, continuing all the way through to next year's Stephen Lawrence Day, where again we can celebrate all the good that we can see in our young people, in our communities, up and down this great country. Thank you.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
To follow the journey and the work being carried out in Stephen's name, head over to the foundation. And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
We will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
To follow all the work and the journey carried out in Stephen's name, head over to the Foundation's Instagram. And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
Help us create a legacy of change by celebrating Stephen Lawrence Day on the 22nd of April. To find out more about how we support young people across the country, please go to stephenlawrenceday.org. And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
We will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And 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 we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
Never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will 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 never forget Stephen Lawrence.
We will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
Never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will 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 never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we'll never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will 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 never forget Stephen Lawrence.
Support us in creating a legacy of change for all by celebrating Stephen Lawrence Day on 22nd of April. To find out more how we support young people, go to stephenlawrenceday.org. And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
To follow the journey and the work carried out in Stephen's name, head to the Foundation's Instagram page at SLDFDN and Twitter at SLDAYFDN and click follow. Help us create a legacy and change for all by celebrating Stephen Lawrence Day on the 22nd of April. And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
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 In celebration of all Britain can be, we will make the changes we need to see.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.
I will never forget Stephen Lawrence, a talented student and loving son, adored by his parents, Neville and Doreen, tragically taken from them at the age of 18. My world changed on the 22nd of April 1993. News headlines read murdered by white youths at a bus stop, innocently. That was gut-wrenching and stuck on my mind. Chosen randomly, wrong place, wrong time. His black face could easily have been mine. It was my George Floyd moment back then, you see, and it still makes no sense to me. For an unforgiving family trial, where even Nelson Mandela came to raise the profile and walk the long walk with the Lawrence family, shaming the Met and the Race Relation Act's inadequacies. The fact that the act is needed at all is a failure of a Britain that gave that famous call to a Windrush generation to come lend a hand.
To help rebuild this motherland.
You tell me, how should I react when most choose to ignore the Race Relations Act that states socially, economically, educationally and more?
To discriminate on the grounds of race
is simply
against the law. We know the law. It's not some apparition in black people's heads or chips on shoulders of race issues long dead. We see those not willing to admit to uncomfortable pasts, not knowing for us that these histories last. This is why it took 18 long years and a Macpherson report through blood, sweat and tears that saw the abolition of the double jeopardy law. 2 out of the 5 retried is something Britain never experienced before. A black family actually changing the law to bring about convictions that said, in 2012, 2 will serve life for killing Stephen, dead. I wish I could say it's done and dusted and we're happy with pride, but it isn't, I can't lie. When black people like Stephen continue to die. None of this I've said is done to create any controversy.
It's simply explaining what brought us here to support
Stephen's legacy. In this moment of global unrest, where people of all ethnicities are voicing their protest, alongside black people to say we will no longer ignore the racism we all deplore. And that's why we will honor Stephen with humility and embrace all the differences and diversity of our human race in celebration of all Britain can be.
In our families, our lives,
and our communities. We will make the changes that we need to see, raising our voices in all we do. We will educate everyone
that he is part of all of us too.
And we will never forget Stephen Lawrence.